Good
Okay.
afternoon, and thank you for joining PSN's guest speaker presentation. Our guest speaker today is Sara Letton. She is with the City of South Lake Tahoe and will be discussing their sustainability programs and policies. My name is Linda Miller, and I lead the Project 7 team for the PSN Policy and Funding Group. Our team discusses state and local sustainability policies and regulations. We will host monthly webinars for the rest of 2022, which will feature sustainability policies in various cities and counties in Nevada and neighboring areas. For today's webinar, we ask that you mute yourselves until the end, when we will open the floor for questions and comments. Feel free to post in the chat box at any time, and we'll be sure to address those entries at the end as well. Today's recording of this presentation will be posted on the PSN YouTube page within 1 week. Thank you for listening in today, and thank you, Sara, for taking the time out of your busy day to talk with us. I'll turn it over to Sara now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here today. Thank you to everyone at Partners for Sustainable Nevada. Um, yeah, happy to be here and tell you about building a robust sustainability program here in the city of South Lake Tahoe. So the plan is that we'll take some questions at the end of the presentation, and I know that myself, Ali, Linda would be happy to take questions by email later as well. So my contact info is on this first slide here, and I've got it at the end of the presentation as well. All right, moving on. Okay, so just to kind of get us all on the same page, I thought I'd ask the big guiding why question. Why sustainability? Why are we doing this now in this day and age? And I think that it's really comes down to kind of establishing a shared set of values. I think we're at a place in our world and society where we have to recognize how our wastefulness negatively impacts others. Um, Climate wise, we're actually on the brink of triggering irreversible, damage and feedback loops, and that's pretty scary. We're in agreement that externalizing costs of environmental damage is no longer okay. I think that, in memory of any of people on this call, probably when it used to be okay to do that, and now we're in a place where we're agreeing. I think that it's no longer okay to do things like that. So this photograph, for example, is from Love Canal in New York when there was a chemical plant that dumped 22,000 barrels of dioxin and other chemicals, onto some acreage of land, and then they ended up just covering it up with dirt and donating the land back to the city of Niagara Falls and building a community and a school right on top of it until all of those chemicals started leaking into people's basements and causing terrible health effects. It was okay to do stuff like that in the 40s and 50s, right? We're no longer in that same place because we agree that the experience of future generations matters, and we agree that people, corporations showed that they're probably not capable of doing the right thing even when the wrong thing is legal, right? So, in talking about sustainability, it's important for all of us to understand, our area of influence. And so, not all of our programs are created equally. We have different scopes and different reach, right? So maybe some of us here today have impact on your colleagues, within your own department, kind of sustainability measures that you're taking within your organization, your department. Some of us have a whole municipal reach where we affect the facilities, all of the facilities within our jurisdiction. Some of us have scopes that are influencing an entire community, right? Some of us are looping into regional efforts and even statewide efforts. This is just a quick grab off of a GIS map here. The city of South Lake Tahoe, where I work, is this bundle of black here at the bottom of the slide. Um, I'm working within the city limits, but also working kind of in touching base regionally, because this whole thing here is a basin and there are communities peppered around the lake, and we all are influencing one another because we're sharing a lot of visitors. We are a town of just about 22,000 people, and this basin sees 15 million visitors a year. So for my role here at the city of South Lake Tahoe, I'm working both at the municipal level, so looking at our facilities and what's, within our control and our properties and our facilities. But I also have a scope where I'm trying to achieve some goals that are community-wide that'll affect all of the residents in the community. Um, I also touch base with our regional planning agency, who engages on a lot of greenhouse gas reduction and sustainability programming, and we can talk about that more a little later. I think I'll go to the next one. So in our city, sustainability and climate leadership, it starts at the top. Um, the strength of our program is really forged by our leadership. And so this is a pretty generic organizational chart, but what I'm trying to show here is hopefully you can see my mouse, but we have a structure in which we have a city council made up of 5 members. And then we have a city manager department, a city attorney, city clerk, treasurer. And what I'm showing right here is really the city manager department. Underneath our city manager, we have a number of departments. We have public works, finance, parks and rec. We've got development services, which has our building department. We have police and we have fire. We don't have any utilities, for example, or wastewater treatment in our city. Um, this little outlier over here on the left, that's me. That's where I reside in the kind of organizational structure here. My direct supervisor is our city manager, and I'm currently not supervising anybody. And so this is kind of a peculiar or unique position to be in, because I work alongside all of our city departments in the programs and projects that I'm working to implement. So folks in all of these departments are my sustainability program, if you will. So I'm not siloed. It was intentionally set up that way to be the opposite of that. And because our city manager cares so much about sustainability and climate, he wanted the person in this position to be a direct report. What I didn't say is that the position is very new. I was just hired at the end of February of this year as the first ever sustainability coordinator. And that's important because there were some important goals that were set even prior to my starting the work here. So let me tell you a little bit about that and on this slide here. So as I kind of touched on there, sustainability in our city is kind of like in everybody's job description, because it has been kind of infused in everybody's work plans. And what I mean by that is, even for example, I don't know if even my video is feeding right now, but on my ID badge here, we have our city values. And the acronym for those values is this word achieves. And it's accountability, communications, honesty, innovation, equity, vitality, efficiency. And the S there is sustainability. So every single person in the city is adhering to that value system. The other thing is some of these high level goals that have been set through time. Um, some important resolutions were passed. So back in 2017, there was a 100% renewable electricity goal that was set with the intention to achieve that both municipally and community-wide by 2032. And then that bar was raised last year at the end of 2021 when a resolution was passed aspiring to 24/7, so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, carbon-free energy. Um, we can get into that a little bit in the Q&A if you like, but that actually even requires technology that's not even fully developed yet. So it's very cutting edge. And our city is actually only one of 3 municipalities in the entire country that has committed to that same standard and signed the United Nations Carbon-Free Energy Compact. Um, let's see. The other resolution that's important in guiding us in this work is a science-based target for greenhouse gas reductions that was passed a few months ago, committing to a 59% reduction by by 2030 from 2015 baseline levels. The other guiding document is our climate action plan that was passed in 2020, a couple years prior to hiring a sustainability coordinator. It's really a roadmap to achieving greenhouse gas reductions, what that is. And then this strategic plan, it's a 5-year document. It was written by the current sitting city council, looking at the next 5 years and setting the direction and really the work plan for everyone in the city for those 5 years. And I can tell you that sustainability and climate is infused throughout that document. Um, so really having all of this kind of in place, what that does is it puts sustainability and climate action really far upstream in project development for city, all kinds of city projects. It means that it's, we're doing better and better at this, putting it in up there in the project, concept phase rather than at the point of like, after the drawings are complete and everything. The idea is to put this really as far upstream as possible rather than as an afterthought. Um, so I'm going to pause right there because this idea of what is sustainability versus what is climate action is it's worthwhile to kind of to reflect on. I know that all of you probably are aware that the state of California is very forward thinking. We've got really ambitious climate goals here. Um, I came into my position as a sustainability coordinator, but I do a lot of climate work too. And so I like this slide that I stole here from Jerry Tiniano to kind of just show how those things are similar and different with a simple Venn diagram. You can look at putting together a sustainability plan, and you can look at some things being sustainability only and not so much about reducing greenhouse gases. And there are other things that are really only about reducing greenhouse gases. And you can see that some of those things kind of fall in between on the overlap. I work largely in this overlap space, definitely over here in the greenhouse gas reduction only space, and I dabble a little bit in the sustainability only space, especially when it comes to like plastics reduction and stuff. Um, so it's just a helpful framing for those of you who are kind of trying to tease that out for yourselves, like I was. So I just want to kind of look at how we're similar and how we're different, California to Nevada, and then where South Lake Tahoe falls in that mix when it comes to climate and energy goals. So on that side of things. So I was noodling around and looking at what's going on in Nevada recently, and we're looking at greenhouse gas reduction goals here, and these are all really kind of difficult to compare because it's not apples to apples, right? We're all articulating different baseline levels. So for what it's worth, these are all intended to be achieved by 2030, you can see, but we have these different baselines, and it would take doing some math and like finding one another's data to figure out, what that really is, against the same baseline. But what I thought was interesting was looking at like renewable energy or electricity goals here. Nevada having a statewide goal of achieving 50% of renewable electricity by 2030. California is at 60% of their renewable energy portfolio by 2030. Um, Nevada's looking at achieving 100% by 2050, California by 2045. And then South Lake Tahoe over here, we have set the bar even higher. We're looking at achieving 100% of all of our electricity from carbon-free sources, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by 2030. And that's an aspirational goal, and that's touching on that United Nations compact that I mentioned in the previous slide. So this is a heavy lift. It's a big goal. And I'm actually looped into some national and international cohorts to try to figure out how to achieve that. Happy to talk more about that later in the Q&A as well. What you don't see in this slide is an intention to achieve 100% municipal renewable electricity by 2025. So that's for our city's facility needs. We're hoping to achieve 100% of that electricity sourced renewable by 2025. So what is it that I'm working on here in SLT, South Lake Tahoe, and what are we, working on across staff? I look at this in two buckets of kind of keep things organized in my own mind. I look at what are my municipal projects, the things that are affecting only our facilities and the land we have control over, right? And then I look at our community-wide goals. So municipally, we're looking at maximizing energy efficiency, maximizing the renewable energy. Like I said, we've got an upcoming goal. It's 2022 already. We've got a 2025 goal. We're looking at our electric vehicle fleet transition and installing the charging infrastructure to get us there. We're looking at, the what's possible now and what's possible on down the line. A lot of our municipal fleet of vehicles is snowplows, and those aren't going to be electric anytime soon. So we're staying realistic for sure. We're looking at vehicle miles traveled reduction. So municipally speaking, that would be incentivizing carpools, for example, or walking and biking to work, or maybe working to see who can work from home a day or two a week. And that's all reducing the number of miles traveled on our roads. A lot of you who visit here would agree that we have a traffic congestion problem. So it's about how we can get vehicles off of roads and, eliminating those greenhouse gases from our footprint here. And we're dabbling a little bit in landscape water efficiency, of course, because we're all in a drought and the state of California has implemented mandatory watering restrictions that we have to abide by. So, yeah, and we're working on affordable housing. We've got a big project going in that's going to be almost all electric, except for their community building. And we're looking at how we can use our procurement process to instill in kind of like see those values trickle down through that procurement process. How can we do a roads project that minimizes vehicle miles traveled, for example? And how might that change, the proposals that we get? Community-wide, what are we doing for the community here? We're committed to a greenhouse gas inventory published every 3 years. We're collecting data from 2021 right now. We started in 2015, so this will be our third report. We're looking at how to achieve that 24/7 carbon-free energy goal. We're looking at deploying public-facing EV charging opportunities on land that we own and manage in town. So for example, there's kind of a park and boat ramp space right at the front end of town on the lake that could use some EV charging. We have a couple of parking lots, a public parking garage behind the Heavenly Village, right near State Line and the casinos. So on those spaces that are managed by the city, we're going to be deploying a lot of EV charging up here. We're also looking at, we're piloting a microtransit project this year that we're running 5 vans, which is, and it's an on-call app-based microtransit project. It acts a little bit like Uber, but you might have to share the van with strangers, is how that works. Right now, it's totally free to the riders. And the idea is that at scale, we'd hope that that would lead to reducing the number of vehicles on our roads, reducing those greenhouse gases as well, and just making everyone's visit far more pleasant because they're going to be in a car less and navigating traffic less. I'm working with our franchisee waste hauler on organic waste reduction through a big important bill called known as SB 1383 here in California that mandates diversion of organic waste from our landfills to avoid methane production as a serious low-hanging fruit in the quest for net zero carbon. I'm working on plastics reduction. Some of you might have heard that South Lake Tahoe recently passed a single-use plastic water bottle ban that will commercially go into effect on Earth Day 2024, so a little over a year and a half from now. And I'm happy to speak more about that in the Q&A afterwards as well. We're looking at reach codes, and what that is building codes that reach beyond the minimum standards. So it would be like going above and beyond for energy efficiency installations, for example. And communities across California are looking at this in their like current housing stock and commercial, but also so that's existing buildings, et cetera, but also the easier kind of lower hanging fruit is what can be done in new building stock because it's easier to, you know, when you're starting from scratch to say install a heat pump instead of retrofit something. Community-wide, we're also looking at increasing our transparency and communications. So I'm actively working to update our sustainability webpage on our kind of antiquated city website. And I'm also helping to build a climate action plan tracking website that's Esri-based or GIS-based. And we're part of a sustainable tourism effort. My city manager is directly involved in that and kind of visioning for that the long term and what that really means for our community and the whole basin. Um, so in order to achieve all of this, collaboration is key. So engaged community members drive sustainability and climate action in South Lake Tahoe. I know because I was one of those engaged community members before I was hired here at the city. I was on a technical advisory committee to the city council, advising on how to achieve that 100% renewable energy goal that was passed as by resolution in 2017, if you remember me mentioning that. So engaged community members really drive the agenda in a lot of ways. It's what our community wants. So as you know, service to the community, the city is seeking to deliver. Community partnerships are also super meaningful, especially for those community-wide sustainability and climate goals. So one that we've put together here that launched before I was on board actually is our South Tahoe Zero Emissions District, and that was formed actually in pursuit of a Department of Energy grant, a Connected Communities grant, maybe 2, 3 years ago at this point. Those are some of the biggest institutions in town who have expressed that they share renewable energy goals and greenhouse gas reduction goals, and they're on board. They're saying let's partner on stuff when the time is right, when the partnership and grant opportunity looks right. And those include our community college, our school district, our hospital system, our public utility district, the county, the affordable housing project I mentioned, and our waste hauler are all partners on that, looking to pilot innovative technologies or look to work together on scaling, you know, and finding efficiencies and economic efficiencies to get what we want. And then the other collaboration piece is finding counterparts outside of your organization. So just like those of you who are watching this today, you're looking to network, you're looking to learn from other communities. So this is one of those that's an opportunity to collaborate, to touch base offline, and attending conferences and stuff. I went to one about a month ago called Mountain Towns 2030, and that's for other mountain towns that have ambitious climate goals. And I have been talking to folks nonstop since I got back. What's your event waste reduction policy? What's your green buildings incentives program policy? Can you send me that? I'll send you mine. And it's another community who reached out and said, we're going to hire our first sustainability coordinator. Can I see your job description so that it can inform how we write ours? That kind of collaboration is it's just super important, especially as we need to scale, because our waste problem and our climate problem are so urgent, and we don't all need to be reinventing the wheel, right? It's all about learning together, sharing what's worked and what hasn't, lessons learned, and we're so that we can scale solutions, right? So now what a lot of you are probably wondering about is, how do you fund sustainability work? I'm going to tell you, I have um, a budget of 0 at the city. And so that's not the end of the world, like I said, because I work across departments, and everyone has different budgets, and sustainability is part of everyone's work plan. But let me walk you through some of these things that I've discovered in my 7 or 8 months on the job here. I've learned that a lot of money can be found in energy efficiency savings. Now, you can do projects like this. I can do projects like this that are kind of piecemeal, and maybe that savings money gets lost, in the city budget, right? That's kind of a shame, right? I'd hope to see that those savings, feed other sustainability projects and climate projects in my city. So something I've learned that is was pretty eye-opening is about ESCOs. Now, this stands for Energy Services Companies. And these kinds of companies are out there, and they're mandated to use the energy efficiency savings to pay themselves. So they're legally, they can all of the projects that they would propose to save you money, say upgrading certain types of appliances, HVAC and things like this, has to save you money, or they have to eat the difference. So this is a really important epiphany that I had, and I'll definitely happy to explain it more later after the presentation. But I'd hope that those of you who have not heard of energy service companies before, that you dig in on that a little bit. The other ways to fund work is through utility programs and incentives. Um, this is coupled with efficiency savings, of course, but like your electricity provider probably has a lot of these types of incentives. A lot of them really might apply to um, governments and facilities more than they would residents, for sure, but they're out there and could save you a lot of money in implementing some of your energy efficiency projects. Of course, there's tons of money flooding in through federal grants from the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Um, there's so much going on right there. I can't even wrap my head around it. I'm leaving that to the pros and kind of reading their summaries. Waiting for a lot of that money to flow through state departments. Right. So here in California, a lot of that might be going through our Department of Transportation or our Energy Commission, for example. Um, Finding partnerships to fund work, can you go into together, on grants, for example, or partnering with your utility itself to maybe develop projects depending on what's kind of legal in your regulated space, right? Um, there's PPA. These are power purchase agreements. It's a way to fund um, say, a solar installation in a way that's cheaper than what you're paying right now for your energy. Financing, I just kind of meant that you can actually go to banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, as a municipality, and get low interest loans that'll front the cost of say HVAC upgrades across all of your city facilities, and have that low interest loan to pay and you can be paying that off with that efficiency savings as well, right? Um, and then just funding sustainability and climate programs in general. How are other cities doing it? It was kind of digging in on that when I was at the conference recently. There are cities that are funding this work through bonds. There's cities like Denver that implemented a 0.25% sales tax right at the beginning of COVID, and they're reaping $41 million a year to fund climate and sustainability work, which is just astounding. I mean, it's a big city, but it's surprising. People in the public, they have an appetite to see this kind of work funded and to see it scaled quickly. So they voted that for themselves, right? And then fees in different ways can fund sustainability work. There are cities that say have tacked on fees to plastic bags at grocery stores and stuff, right? In California, we have a mandatory minimum 10-cent fee for these reusable plastic bags at grocery stores. That are communities who are adding another 10 cents and funding sustainability. Um, some communities are adding fees to their like waste haul bills, a few bucks a month from everybody in town, and it's funding sustainability and climate work, right? So there's all kinds of creative ways to fund, your sustainability budget. And I'm not sure what we're going to land on here in South Lake Tahoe yet, but believe me, I'm thinking about a lot of it. Um, in California only, and I don't know what applies to Nevada. I just thought I'd do this short list here. These are low carbon fuel standard credits. This has to do with California's cap and trade system, and the credits that are sent back to communities for the more use there is from EV charging, for example. It's offsetting carbon in other places in the state, and it helps fund EV charging. iBank is a California bank, but it's super low interest loans for climate and sustainability work. Environmental attributes are, if you think about renewable energy projects, it's kind of weird to think that sometimes you can separate the environmental goodness of a renewable energy project from the energy generation of that, and you can sell environmental attributes. It depends on the value system of the entity who's installing that renewable energy project, but you can decouple those and market them. There's also money coming from local air quality districts and state grants and stuff. So these are all just kind of ideas and letting you know where municipalities like in California are getting funding for a lot of this work. I think close to the end here. Yeah, here we go. So questions and discussion. I just kind of went through a whole bunch of stuff. Happy to start to take questions if you like. And just let you know that I'd be happy to correspond with you all offline by phone here or at this email address. And I think I'm just going to end it there and say thank you, everybody, for your attention. And I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and bring it back to the group. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you for that comprehensive presentation on all the important sustainability work that the City of South Lake Tahoe is doing. You've certainly piqued my curiosity, and I'm sure others, on a lot of the points that you made. I did post a couple of questions on the chat box, but would like to first give others that are here an opportunity to unmute yourself. If you have a question, please feel free to do that now.
Hi, Sara. This is Risa Miller speaking. I just wanted to thank you, first off, for speaking to the group today. It was really interesting hearing you,
Thank you.
give us lowdown on what South Lake Tahoe is doing. I don't know if you see me or not on the camera. Okay,
Yep.
sorry. I don't know why that's happening.
Oh.
Anyway, I see, Linda, you have in the chat box the sustainable tourism, and that's something actually that I do have some questions around, and one of the things up front in the presentation you talk about, I know I'm just kind of giving out numbers, but you said that there were 22 residents, and I don't remember how many millions of visitors come to South Lake Tahoe. And I guess what I found interesting, because there were millions, I don't remember how many millions you said, but on that list, on what you're working on the community-wide, the sustainable tourism was actually bottom of the list. And it almost kind of seems interesting that that would be on the bottom, given the millions of people who are coming to visit each year. And I know I personally have done some research in my last role. I was at New York Times and I was on the insights team, and I did a bunch of research on sustainable travel. I know what challenges I would hear when I'd be interviewing people, which was sort of I'm already doing my part. When it comes to travel, kind of like, let me just travel and not worry about so much, sustainability. I was wondering if that was part of the challenge of why that was so bottom on that list.
That's a super great question. Very, that was a good catch, and it's not the answer. I have an answer that's not what you're expecting. The reason I put that low was because I was thinking about what's on my plate as a sustainability coordinator. The reason it's not so much on my plate is because it's on my city manager's plate. It's huge, and
Yeah.
it's spanning so many other partnerships and entities in the community that it's huge, and it's going, and there is a ton of engagement on that. There's community-wide workshops, multiple of them. There's a high-level consultant that's been managing the entire thing. So it's going, and it's going big. And they just said,
Yeah.
Sarah, just know that this is happening. We'll bring you in when it's time. But so yes, it's definitely a huge effort. And just to throw those numbers back out, small town, 22,000 with 15 million visitors, and that's basin wide. We get many or most of those visitors maybe at some point in their stays here, but so yeah, it's definitely a lot to manage, and the notion of kind of reframing people's approach to tourism is a big and heavy lift, especially when you have
Yeah.
a bunch of casinos on your border.
Right.
So,
Yeah, no, I know. It's really interesting, the whole sustainable travel
yeah,
idea, but and the challenges that come with it too.
yeah, big
Yeah.
time.
So I'd like to just dovetail on that as it relates to education. What if any education has rolled out with the community, local community, and tourism? Are there? I'm sorry, I'm hearing some feedback. Maybe is it just me, or perhaps others need to mute themselves? Yeah. Yeah. So, Sarah, would you mind touching on education? What efforts are in place now? What do you foresee perhaps that might help to improve upon what you have now?
Yeah. We have a wonderful public information officer that's joined the city staff about a year and a half ago, who's really been wonderful about taking on social media and trying to be more communicative about what's going on at the city. So there's that piece, but there's also just the need for partnering. So we have the Lake Tahoe Visitors Authority has a wide reach in their marketing efforts. We definitely going to be reaching out to them to help educate our visitors on that single-use plastic water bottle ban, for example. Why are we doing that? Doing it? How does it affect, their stay? That we really want to be co-branded and be proud of it. Like, yeah, we don't want your plastic water bottles here. Guess what? We have amazing tap water, probably the best in the world, So that kind of messaging and outreach. We're going to be working with nonprofit partners like the League to Save Lake Tahoe and the Tahoe Fund that bring in tremendous amounts of private donations to keep the lake a sustainable resource for future generations, right? People come here for that kind of clear blue water, right? And hopefully it's going to be like that, for my grandchildren. That's the intention, right?
So
So
so I realize that the single-use plastics water ban is new, but there were some prior bans a few years back, I believe, styrofoam, plastic straws, other things.
Yeah.
Is that how difficult has it been, or challenging has it been to get these bills passed or laws passed, and how are they enforced? Is it
Hmm.
more the carrot, or is there a stick as well, or a combination of both?
It's we have a really leadership minded city council. They don't mind taking on something that no one else has done yet and being first. Um, so there's that, it's like setting the goal and then figuring out how to implement that. So styrofoam ban, yeah, has been in place for a few years, and that's mostly how that looks is like the clamshell containers from like takeout food. um, we're mostly compliant. There are a few straggler businesses in the community that are having trouble changing over, but I think that, again, we can only do what we can do within our jurisdictional boundaries. And a lot of people who come to visit, and a lot of people who live here, don't actually realize that the city footprint is a lot smaller than they think it is. It's not totally contiguous with like the business boundaries, for example. So sometimes people will be at restaurants and they'll say, "You have styrofoam containers," but guess what? They're not in the city boundaries. So we can only do what we can do here, right? Um, the other thing that was passed in that ordinance was that the add-on bits, like the single-use foodware, the plastic forks and knives and things like that, the little sauce packets, those need to be furnished upon request only. So they can't just be stuffed into the bag. And yeah, and now styrofoam the ban has been expanded to include like raw meat packaging that had been exempted, and with the new updated ordinance, that's also part of it. So we have some educating to do for our local businesses, and we are partnering with like the League to Save Lake Tahoe, and that's the Keep Tahoe Blue organization. They kind of have that marketing angle that they're more known by. So yeah.
That must be incredibly helpful with just 15 million visitors per year at South Lake Tahoe. Then we need to consider the entire lake and the
Well, that
partnering
15 million is the
cities.
whole lake. Yeah,
Oh, the
that's
whole
and so
lake.
we get a
Okay.
we get a piece of the 15 million.
That's
But
still
we're the biggest city on the lake. We're the only incorporated city. We have a lot more services than any of these tiny little communities, peppering the lake. So we
right.
see a lot of them.
That
Yeah.
is that is still a very significant number. So Keep Tahoe Blue, that organization, so they I think we've seen that name around the entire lake, all the
Yes.
communities around the entire
Yep.
lake. So they probably help to with communications and trying to
Absolutely.
create collaborations to protect our beautiful lake and
Absolutely.
natural landscape.
Absolutely. They do really important work on that messaging, and they have a wide membership and a wide distribution list for that messaging. And yeah, they are definitely important partners. I talk to them a lot.
Great. You mentioned ESCOs. I was wondering, would you mind sharing?
Yeah.
This is a new organization, a name for me and maybe others here. Um, is this a free or paid resource? And what else would you like to share with us about this organization?
Yeah, yeah. So this is like, think of this as like they're just like a category of consultants. It's kind of in the conservation and sustainability space. A lot of them are design build general contractors. They can do they have engineering in house. It's kind of like a one-stop shop is what they are. But they're federally like legislated as ESCOs. So this is something you can actually look up, and they're like in their mandate. What they do is they're identifying cost savings. They're looking at modernizing infrastructure, sustainability, revenue enhancement opportunities, but they implement like a whole bundle of efficiencies and technology improvements that have to be funded by the, the project savings, or it's not, or they have to legally, they have to eat the difference. And it's hard to believe. It sounds like it's too good to be true, but that is actually like legislated, that's what an energy service company has to do. They go in, they do an investment grade energy audit across all your facilities. And they say, this HVAC system is ancient. You're just bleeding money. You can upgrade that system for this amount of money. You're going to find this much cost savings over 20-25 years. They calculate that all out, and then they're the way that they structure all of those upgrades is that the outflow from the agency or the city, whatever, it cannot cost that entity more than they're paying in utility bills. I know it's hard to believe, but it is very true that this is how these companies work. And the more that you can throw into the bucket of potential projects, the better. So the more, say, potential for renewable energy. Are you willing to put some solar on your roofs? Cool, because that's going to most likely to lower your energy bills, and that savings, you might have millions and millions of dollars in savings over 15, 20, 25 years. And then you can go to your board of directors, your city council, and say, by the way, we can invest in this stuff over here because we're saving all this money that we would, you were already okay with spending, and we can use that money to do these other, invest in other types of sustainability initiatives, right? So some energy service companies take it even further. They will, they're the pros in the IRA and IIJA federal money that's flowing through. They'll help you identify the appropriate grants so that, if you get this grant, and then you can maybe take out a very low interest loan from a bank to front that cost. Of something, right? They kind of piece together the funding for you, and they figure out this thing is kind of expensive, but it's a priority for your city. Well, that you can help fund it because you're saving money over here. And so they look at this whole bucket of things. Is it EV charging, solar, batteries, waste reduction efforts? Are you already managing, wastewater treatment facility? How can you change your time of use in your processing to find energy savings? So they're really looking at the whole suite of all of the goals that you can set, and they're helping you strategize and save money while you're doing it. So it takes the pressure off of individuals like me, right? And some of you on the call maybe, to figure all that out. Like, they live and breathe this. They're doing it for other communities. They can show you, I've been in contact with other communities, other people like in my position, and they're like, oh my gosh, I could have never done this without so-and-so. We put out $3 million in a low interest loan, but we have like $20 million in savings over the coming years, and they're just over the moon about it. So I thought this was some sort of well-kept secret. I wanted to make sure that you and your viewers knew about this, because I think it is up the path that we're going to take here at the city. It just means putting out an RFP. There are so many templates for this already that exist out there. Don't make it up. Reach out to me. Like, there's already, these templates floating around that I'm going to use. I'm happy to share them. So yeah, and there's a lot of these entities that are ready to jump on these RFPs.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for that, Sara. And then I just have one other question myself. I have many questions. You just have brought up so many points that just require so many questions, but I do want to give others an opportunity. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to pose? Feel free to just unmute yourself if you do. All right. I do want to ask one other question, Sara, because we're getting close to the time that you committed to us. Thank you so much. You mentioned organics diversion, SB 1383. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about this. Does Southlake have an active program in place right now, and do you see that changing in any way?
Yeah, it's a good question. This is a pretty big deal here in California, and so yeah, the idea is to take organic material out of out of landfills as much as possible because it anaerobically, digests, creates methane, which is a huge, huge greenhouse gas problem. So take out the paper, take out the cardboard, take out the food waste, and that's the idea. So that's driving the development of a kind of a bioeconomy, like a compost, a market for compost here, right? So it's all your green waste too, right? So what that looks like, and if you're visiting California, you're going to notice if you have family in California or something, right? Everybody's mandated to compost their kitchen waste now, for example, right? Almost everybody. South Lake actually has an exemption because we have such a bear problem up here that serving it up to the bears on the curbside is not a good idea. So what we encourage people here to do, it's kind of side note, is that everything that goes down our garbage disposals goes to the wastewater treatment plant and is composted. It's actually hauled to Nevada to Full Circle to be turned into high grade compost. But what we do have to do, so part of my mandate here is in edible food recovery. So there's a lot of perfectly edible food that has traditionally gone to landfills as well. Part of SB 1383 is in maximizing the diversion from food generating facilities, so grocery stores, all the way down to good-sized restaurants, even events, that food has to find a home with people who need it. So part of my role is in seeing that those generating entities I'm kind of matchmaking them to the those who are doing getting the food out the door to the community, right? So those are and some communities have food banks or service providers that kind of play that role. Our community doesn't really. Our food bank is down in Placerville, so we have a little bit of a heavier lift to try to figure out how to get because we're serving hundreds of thousands of people food a year, right? Because we have all these visitors. We have 22,000 people. I'm sure some of those people could use a little bit more food, but we probably have more than we can even manage here. And so we're probably going to have to get some of that food down the hill toward Placerville and beyond once this program is in full swing. So it's an interesting challenge to have.
Wow. Well, Sara, we're down to just like 2 minutes. So I just want to make sure to thank you for your time today and for presenting all the wonderful programs and efforts, sustainability efforts that you and your department, that your city is making. And we look forward to staying in touch. And by all means, feel free to reach out to us if you think of anything. And we look forward to staying in touch with you, certainly.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to your group today. I hope that we're all part of one another's networks now. You have my contact information. Let's share with each other. Let's learn from one another, and let's scale solutions together. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara.
All right. Take care. I'll go ahead and log off.